Welcome to Wife in Bloom, the podcast where faith, femininity, and fierce love collide. I'm Ashley, a Christian wife and mom, but mostly a woman on a mission to help you break free from shame, insecurity, and limiting beliefs, so you can fully embrace the confident, capable, and joy-filled wife that God created you to be. Here, we talk about real intimacy, renewed mindsets, and growing stronger in marriage and in Christ. If you're ready to bloom where you're planted, love with purpose, and finally feel at home in your body, your role, and your calling, you're in the right place. Let's bloom together. What if I told you that some of the very things that we do because we think that we are being a good Christian wife are actually the things that hold our marriage back? You might be checking all of the boxes, but you might actually be using those boxes to build walls instead of bridges. Hi, and welcome back to Wife in Bloom. I am Ashley, and I am so excited that you are here. Today's conversation, it might step on toes a little bit. I know that it stepped on mine when God started dealing with me in these areas, but I think it is a really important conversation. It might be one of the most freeing, life-giving conversations that we've had so far on the podcast. Because I don't know about you, but for years, I tried to check the boxes that I thought made me a good Christian wife, and how I should be quiet, agreeable, prayerful, always serving, endlessly selfless, carrying the family through every season with a smile on my face. That sounds right, right? That's what we're told a godly woman should be, what a Proverbs 31 woman should be. And that is true. All of that is true. But here's the hard truth in those very things. Silence under the guise of respect or busyness to prove worthiness in the wife area, or prayer without actions, waiting on better seasons. Those things nearly kept my marriage from growing into what God actually wanted it to be. So today I want to walk through 4 ways where I think that we are told that we're being good Christian wives, but we're actually hindering and potentially hurting our marriages. And don't worry, it isn't going to be all doom and gloom. I'm going to share some stories and a few scriptures that reshaped my perspective and some practical things that you can start doing today. Because here's the thing. Jesus did not call us to barely get by in marriage. Marriage is so important. It is the foundation that our lives are built on, really. And it's a picture of our union with Christ. He said in John 10:10, I came so that they may have life and have it abundantly. That means joy, passion, connection, all of those things, especially in marriage. So grab your coffee and let's dig in. Point number 1 is staying silent instead of speaking the truth in love, because silence isn't submission, it's stagnation. Early in our marriage, I thought that silence was the answer. I thought it was respect, and if I'm being honest, I thought it was safer. See, I hated conflict. I avoided it like the plague. And underneath all of that, I also had a lot of insecurity in myself, in our marriage, and not because our marriage wasn't great, but because you see it all the time. Disagreements and tensions easily lead to divorce in today's world. So I stayed quiet for years. I didn't bring up the little things. I didn't challenge Carson when something that I needed was lacking. I didn't push for deeper conversations, not really. And I thought I was being a good wife, a respectful, loving wife in doing so. We were and always have been madly in love, but we were complacent and content, which contentment actually hurt us in this area a lot, which it's a word that we're taught to seek after, and it actively hurt my marriage. Because we were content and happy and in love, we were good. However, we're nothing like we are now at all. Comparatively, at that point, we were distant and stagnant in entirety. And here's the thing, every single day is an opportunity for growth. But when you avoid the hard conversations, when you keep quiet instead of speaking up, speaking truth in love, you stop that growth dead in its tracks. Ephesians 4:15 says, "Speak the truth in love. We are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ." Truth in love is how we grow, both as individuals and as a couple. But my silence set us back. I wasn't letting Carson see all of me, the messy parts, the insecure parts, the frustrated parts. I mean, I let him see plenty of crazy, but you know what I mean. It could have been deeper. I wasn't demanding in the most loving way more from him in any of the ways, and I wasn't being honest and transparent with what I needed. And if marriage is meant to be two becoming one, hiding those parts of myself, even out of the godly wife place that I was trying to come from, it created distance. And that distance, the silence and the passivity, it it made me a quiet, humble, respectful wife in my book. The things that honestly we both thought were making us good spouses, but it later had us fighting for our marriage in a way that neither of us ever saw coming. And let me tell you the crazy part. Every single time that I did speak up, that I finally spoke up, 90% of the time it went better than I expected. You know, sure, there's moments where I was a bundle of emotions and didn't handle myself well. And in that, there's moments where Carson's calmness drove me crazy because I wanted him to match my fire. But even then, even in the messy and the sometimes painful conversations, growth happened. Exponential growth happened, and it keeps compounding every single day because even bad conflict, when handled with love, can and will create a deeper connection. So, what do you do when you recognize this in yourself? If you've been being quiet in the name of keeping the peace, or just choosing to, be humble in that way. The first step is to start small. You don't have to suddenly unload years of pent up, misguided silence all at once. You can take one step towards honesty. The next time that you have that knot in your stomach, the moment that you would normally choose silence, open your mouth gently. Say something like, "I feel overwhelmed when the house gets messy. Can we work on a plan together?" Or, "I really need some encouragement right now. Can you remind me of something good?" These aren't attacks, they're invitations. They're to let your spouse know what's happening inside of you without putting him on the defense, because that happens easily, right? And what I've learned is that marriage doesn't require eloquence. I don't say the right things, and I don't always say them the right way by any means, but it does require courage. You don't have to say it perfectly, but even if the words come out clumsy, even if your voice shakes, even if you cry, saying something is better than saying nothing. Think about it like a garden. If you let your weeds grow completely unchecked, they eventually choke out all of the life. Silence is like letting the weeds grow. You may not notice it right away, we didn't, but over time, it can suffocate your connection. Even if you think that the silence is for the right reasons and it makes me a better wife. But if you pull the weeds as they come, even if it's just a one little weed at a time, your garden thrives. And your marriage is honestly the same way. Little conversations that are spoken in love, they keep resentment from taking root. And honesty doesn't mean harshness. Please take note of that. Ephesians 4:29 reminds us, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful in building others up." This is a situation where the goal isn't to unload or attack, it is to build. And this doesn't always come easily, especially when emotions are involved. But always making the effort to handle things with a gentle tongue will make a difference. I know this from experience. It goes better that way. Being someone who has tried, addressing things in a not so positive light and then in a much more nicely packaged way. So, when was the last time that you stayed silent because you thought that it would keep the peace? Did it actually bring peace, or did it create distance, potentially even resentment? Avoiding conflict doesn't protect your marriage, it paralyzes it. Every single conversation, even the hard ones, is an opportunity for growth. On to point number 2 is faith without footsteps. Prayer without action is just passivity in a pretty dress. And honestly, I wore that dress for too long. God isn't asking you to pray for a change without refusing to step into it yourself. And this one hit me like a ton of bricks. There were so many times that I thought I was being super wifely by saying that I would just pray about it. It sounded good. And honestly, it was a cop out. I would pray and pray for Carson to be the leader that I wanted him to be, all while gripping super tight to the steering wheel, white knuckling it. And I told myself that that was respect, that I was letting him lead while I just prayed. But the truth is it wasn't respect at all. It was fear. Fear that if I loosened control, everything would fall apart. Fear that if I spoke about what I needed, I would look naggy, which is something that I also avoided like the plague. So instead of leaning in and partnering with God and my husband, I just sat there saying prayers, but refusing to move. Here's the thing, prayer, powerful tool. Do not misunderstand me. But prayer without obedience, without action, without actually stepping into what God is asking of you, it's incomplete. John 2:17 says, faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Dead. And some of us are praying for things in our marriages while refusing to actually breathe life into them with our own actions. So yes, God works through prayer all the time, right? We see it all the time, but it doesn't mean that all you do is pray and boom, things are fixed. It's actually, it reminds me of the silly sayings, like the girl that prayed and prayed for a cake and God kept giving her the ingredients, but she was so upset because she didn't have a cake. Bake the damn cake. Pardon my French, but bake the cake. And this was revolutionary to me. I realized that I needed to do more than just pray that our communication was better, pray that our time, spent got better, pray that our priorities actually became priorities. I needed to live those things. And I kept getting given the tools, but I wasn't baking the cake. So we started some non-negotiables through a lot of struggle and a lot of us failing and some fights, but a lot of those have stuck. So we knew that if what we kept doing was what we were doing, then nothing was going to change. We got bold and we said that we were going to do the thing. We started reading our Bible together every day. We prayed together several times a day. And it's not convenient. We literally set our alarms for 3:00 in the morning to sit at the dining room table, blurry-eyed, and pray and study and invest time together on the front lines before work. I want sleep, trust me, but I want a thriving marriage so much more. And I can't even explain how that has shifted everything. It has softened our hearts towards each other. It has created a level of spiritual intimacy that has bled into every other area of our marriage. Suddenly we weren't just, getting through life, surviving, but we were teammates before the throne of God. We weren't starting our day off all like willy-nilly, praying silently and starting our day in separately, but we're actively choosing every single day to do the things that grow us individually and our marriage. And let me tell you, that is something that can absolutely and will transform your marriage. Husbands, pray over your wives. Whew. Ladies, if you have ever had your husband wrap your arms around you and pray for and with you, you can't put into words how different it feels. It'll change the way you see him. It will change the way that you respect him. It'll change the way that you connect. The spiritual covering that it creates is something that our souls crave. And it makes me crave more of my husband too. Wink, wink. Seriously though, being a wife and knowing what it feels like in those moments, the safety, the connection, the depth. Don't think for a second, guys, that praying over your wife can't be an aphrodisiac that lasts all day long. So yes, pray. Pray boldly, but don't stop there. Don't use prayer as an excuse to stay silent or passive. Let it be a launching pad that moves you into action, not a hiding place that keeps you stuck. So, when you feel tempted to say, I'm going to pray about it, pause and ask yourself, is God also nudging me to act? Because faith and action aren't enemies at all, they're partners. Yes, pray for your husband, lift your marriage to God, but then take one practical step of obedience in the same direction as your prayer. For example, if you're praying, Lord, help us communicate better, don't stop there. Follow it up by action. Initiate that conversation that you've been putting off. Or if you've been praying for more intimacy, do something small but intentional tonight, like light a candle, put the phones away, and lean in. And let's just talk about prayer together again really quick, because I know that some of you are sitting there and you're listening and you're thinking, my husband would never pray with me. I used to think that too. But one day I asked him, I'm going to get emotional. And I asked him and I asked him again. And I didn't let it go because I knew that we needed it. And he knew that we did too, but it was hard to implement because if you know, you know. It's awkward at first. It's clunky. But the more that we did it, the more natural it became. And it changed how I saw him and it changed how we face everything together. Start small. Pray before meals, pray before bed, pray on the way to church, and watch how it transforms the way that you see each other. Have you been using prayer as an excuse to avoid action? Where is an area that you need to pray, but then also move in this week? You can't actually pray your marriage into health if you refuse to participate in the healing. Prayer is powerful, but it is not a pass at all for passivity. Quick drink of coffee before we get into 3. Equating service with love while neglecting actual connection. I used to believe that service was enough. I cooked, I cleaned, I kept the kids alive, I managed the schedules, and just handled all the things, like that had to prove my love, right? That is what a good Christian wife does. And she smiles the whole time doing it because joyful heart and all. And that's what I thought God wanted from me. And yes, service is good and it is godly. But here's the trap. Somewhere along the way, sometimes we start to place too much value on service, or at least I did. And if I looked at it as if it was the ultimate way to show love, another box to be checked in the am I being a good wife checklist. And without even realizing it, both of us, and because of the push from me, we started to show up for the house, the kids, the responsibilities, but not fully showing up for our marriage. And here's what it looked like. Carson would make bids for my attention and connection. He'd ask me to dinner, suggest a short, quick trip out of town, a motorcycle ride, all the things. Tried to really pull me into his world in simple, sweet ways. And because I was exhausted from all of my service, I would say no. And in my mind, if you compound how hard I was working to check off the box and my health issues at the time, I was justified in that. Didn't he see how much I was already doing for us? Which he did. He always did. But I was tired and I didn't have the time or energy to get ready to go to dinner. And sometimes deep down, I was even offended that he asked because I felt guilty for saying no. But I didn't see at the time that they weren't just casual asks. They were ways of him saying, I want more of you. And when I dismissed them, I wasn't just rejecting an invitation. I was rejecting an opportunity for us to grow deeper together. And what I would do to have those moments back, because you don't get them back. And it works both ways, doesn't it? Because while I was overvaluing service for myself, I was also secretly and maybe even subconsciously measuring Carson's love by whether or not he was doing tasks that I thought mattered. If he didn't notice that the overflowing trash was there or the mess was on the counter, I told myself that he wasn't showing up for me. But the truth is he simply did not see it the way that I did. So we were two people that were missing each other, again, for the sake of trying to be a good Christian wife, but missing the mark. Me proving love through surface was actually withholding myself from him because I was giving it to checking off the box of a good wife task list first. And him proving his love through bids for connection while missing my silent expectations, it just kept us stuck and silent and disconnected and not fully showing up in the ways that both of us needed. So what do we do differently in these situations? Well, we start by first recognizing that service is what it is. It is a good thing, but it is not the main thing. Your marriage needs to be something that you look at more than the spotless kitchen. Your spouse wants presence more than they want perfection. And you can't burn yourself out on the task and miss time with your spouse. So this means that the next time that your husband makes a bid for connection in any way, whether it's dinner, a conversation, or even just a playful moment, pause before you brush it off, which we easily do without even thinking, right? We brush off the playful moments. Even if you're tired, even if the to-do list feels longer than the hours are in the day, which it is, and it's still going to be there tomorrow. Ask yourself, is this an opportunity to show up in my marriage, to show up for my husband? And it doesn't always have to be a grand yes. You don't have to force yourself into something that will drain you, but you can look at a softer yes, like, I love that you want to go out, but I don't have the energy for a full night out. How about we do something small, just the two of us? You can look at it in a smaller way, but in hindsight, I really suggest that you do go out. 80% of the time, you're happy that you did. And, you could say, I can't talk about this second. Can we circle back to it when the kids are down tonight? And do your best to bring that thing back up and make a plan for whatever it was. Answer the bid for connection, because it's not about being perfect. It's about being intentional and choosing our marriage over the tasks, choosing connection over the checklist, and about being present. So have you been showing up for the tasks, but not fully showing up for your marriage? Have you been silently expecting your spouse to prove love through chores, even if it's subconsciously, and duties instead of hearing the bids for connection that he may actually be making? The thing is you can fold every single load of laundry and you can scrub every single dish. But if you're not fully showing up in your marriage, your love will still feel lacking. Service is good, but connection is what makes your marriage grow in entirety. And we're just going to take one more drink. Point 4. And this one might be sticky, but it is embracing the season while putting your marriage on the back burner. Your season is probably hard. However, it is not an excuse to neglect your covenant, and waiting for the season to change only wastes what you have, which is today. So in Christian culture, we love to talk about seasons. We love to say this is just the season of raising babies. It's the season of busyness at work. It's the season of building. And yes, grace for the season is real. And God does give us different assignments for different times in life. But here is the danger that I am seeing and that was in our life. It's used as an excuse to stop choosing your spouse, an excuse to push marriage onto the back burner until things settle down. But the truth is life does not settle down. There's always another storm. Carson and I have been there. We've worked opposite shifts. We've raised little ones that demanded every single ounce of our attention until we don't think we have ounces left. We've walked through seasons of health struggles, and during those times, our marriage slipped into survival mode, because it does. And we weren't falling apart. We loved each other, but again, we were complacent. We were happy, but shallow, getting by, but not growing at all. And when I look back, I realize how much depth and intimacy that we missed out on because we were waiting for life to settle down, to slow down. And spoiler alert, it never did. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven." Seasons are real. We all know this, but it was never meant to be an excuse for neglecting, again, the covenant of marriage. I love the image of the buffalo, and it's really coming, like it's talked about a lot right now, but when the storm comes, the cow runs away from it, which just keeps them in it longer. But the buffalo, it runs straight into the storm because they know that that is the fastest way through, is together head on. And that is what marriage should look like in every season. When life gets hard, when the storm rolls in, one of you grabs the other one's hand and you say, "Oh, sorry, I'm getting emotional. Okay, we're going to be the buffalo. We're going to run through this together. We have each other and we have God." And, let me tell you one of my favorite memories about seasons that just proves that how the little intentionality matters even in the hardest of seasons. Our very first Valentine's Day in our home, we were broke, stressed, barely keeping it together, burning candles at all ends, and exhausted. But that Valentine's Day, I came upstairs, I'm gonna cry, to find sticky notes covering our entire house, like everywhere. Mirrors, cupboards, doors, walls, windows, and each one had written on it something that Carson loved about me. And with them was a single rose, some chocolates, and a handwritten card on the table. I can't imagine that he spent more than $10 in total. But I felt more seen and more loved in that moment than I probably ever had. And it remains to be one of the most important gifts that he has ever given me. Marriage does not need extravagance. It does not need someday things will get easier. It needs intentionality today. So stop waiting for life to slow down, because it won't. The kids won't suddenly stop needing you. The work won't magically become easy. The ministries you're involved in aren't going to disappear. There will always be another season and another reason, another excuse to delay the work that you need to put into your marriage today. And as much as we need to honor the season that we are in, it is important that hiding in it, waiting for it to pass, it's harmful instead of hurtful. And it's just an excuse to remain stuck and comfortable. The only time that you actually have is today. Yesterday's dead and tomorrow is not here yet. So the season as a whole doesn't actually matter. Today matters. So don't wait until the storm passes to show up. Hold hands and run through the storm together today. It might look like leaving a note on the counter before work, sending a flirty text in the middle of the day, choosing to sit next to each other instead of on opposite ends of the couch. Just having whispering conversations before bed, even though you're tired. Grabbing their hand and saying that I love doing this life with you, because they matter. Those little things are not insignificant. They are the glue that holds your marriage together. Through the chaos, they are the building blocks. And here's the key. When you choose your spouse first, even in the middle of the hard seasons, especially in the middle of the hard seasons, you're reminding each other that no matter what happens outside of these walls, inside of this marriage, we're a united team. And that security makes every storm less threatening, because you know that you're facing it together, that you're a team anchored in Christ, running toward it together. So ask yourself today, how can I consciously choose my spouse? Not tomorrow, not someday, not this weekend, not when the kids are older, not when the bills are lighter, or when the job slows down, but today. Because marriage isn't meant to wait for the season to end. It's meant to weather the season together. That's what we were given it for. What seasons are you in right now? And what's that look like for your marriage? And what's one small intentional act that you can do today, not someday, to choose your spouse and to face the storm together? Because the truth is the seasons are never going to slow down, but you don't need easy to choose each other. You need intentionality. Again, today is the only day that you have to show up for your spouse. So after all of that, let's land the plane. We talked today about 4 big ways that we think that we are being Christian wives, and we are, but it is also really hurting our marriages because it's taking priority. Number 1 was staying silent instead of speaking truth in love, because thinking silence keeps the peace just really builds walls. Number 2 was praying without participating, which I'm very, very guilty of. Not anymore. Using prayer as an excuse to avoid action instead of letting it fuel obedience and change is just harmful. Number 3 is equating service with love, because when you're showing up for the tasks but not fully showing up in your marriage, you're potentially missing bids for connection, but you're also exhausted and putting your energy not where it goes. And number 4 is letting the season be the excuse. Do not push your marriage to the back burner. Weather the storm together, please. These are not just bad habits, guys. These are the little foxes that are talked about in Song of Solomon 2:15 that quietly spoil the vineyard if you don't catch them. And your marriage is too valuable, too sacred to let these foxes run. So here is my challenge for you this week. Pick one of the 4 areas that hit you the hardest. And I know if you're like me, it's going to be hard to choose because, man, write it down, circle it, and own it. And then take one small intentional step to love your spouse differently through that today. Not someday, not when life gets easier, but today. Send him a text, hold his hand, start a conversation, say yes to the little bid for connection. Whatever it is, do it today, because being a godly wife is not about silence or perfection or burning yourself out in service. It's about showing up, speaking truth in love, choosing connection, and running towards the storm together with your spouse and with God. And it is worth it. I promise. I promise. And I want to remind you that you're not failing at this. You are learning. You're growing. And every single step that you take towards intentionality in yourself and in your marriage, it matters. It matters. If today's episode encouraged you, I would love to ask you a favor to share it with a friend who needs to hear it. Screenshot it, text it, post it to your story, and tag me because I would love to cheer you on. And do not forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify because it helps me a lot in growing the little community of wives that we are and the ones that are choosing to bloom right where they are. All right, I cannot wait to hang out with you guys next week. Until then, keep showing up for yourself and for your marriage. Keep running towards the storm, and as always, keep blooming. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for spending this time with me today, friend. If this episode spoke to you, don't just keep it to yourself. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, and share it with a friend who's ready to bloom too. We're just getting started, and the best is yet to come. Until next time, keep growing, keep blooming, and remember, you are loved, you are chosen, and you are not alone.